the one thing that is actually going to work. Other people have studied this. There's a study from Booth Allen Hamilton that concluded that there's no correlation between the amount of R&D spending and the return people get on the spending. Because what matters, of course, is what you invest the money in, not that you just spend the money. Now, the next question is, where do these ideas actually come from? Now, of course, when you start a company, you have an idea that you get really attracted to and you love it. But in a big company, right, people scratch their heads of, they talk to customers, they talk to their employees, the research lab comes up with new stuff. Like, where does this stuff actually come from? Now, of course, ideas can come from anywhere. So a good thing about being a student or before you work for somebody is you get to talk to people without NDAs. You can brainstorm, and get a lot of ideas from that. But in the real world, people do focus groups and market research studies and all this stuff. Well, again, we tend to underestimate external knowledge or external wisdom, and more advice from, another quiz question: which company spends the least amount of time on external input? Is, again, Apple. Specifically, they were quoted as saying, we don't do focus groups, we don't do market research, we just trust our own instincts basically in what we do. And so far it has worked well for them. But the reason it works well for them is they take ownership of the innovation process. In other words, they have debugged this process now the last 10, 20, 30 years, and they really believe and they've proven that they can do it successfully. They had no major product failure in the last 10 years. And of course, hand in hand goes to say no to everything else. So the bottom line of this is not everybody can be Apple, right? They have a particular sexy business model, they have great products, they have this universal appeal. What does matter is to focus on the right things, don't get distracted by too many other factors, and just do it. Now, there's another way to think about this from a brainstorming, design, and delivering perspective, because brainstorming is cheap, right? One can sit around the coffee shop and just talk about stuff and let's get more ideas. But in a normal company, what makes it so hard is that all the money is actually spent when you build the thing, right? So prototypes, programmers, whatever the spending is correlated to the end part of this. In big companies, people don't spend enough time at the beginning phase of that, quite frankly, because nobody watched, there's no money being spent, so there's nothing to control there. Whereas the actual value, the innovation, is created at this beginning stage, not at the end stage. The end stage is just to build the stuff. So one advantage you have as a startup is you can spend a lot of more energy on the upfront part of what is it exactly what we're building here, and hope to raise enough venture capital to pay for the execution, whereas in the big company, most of the money goes to enhancing the current products, adding a little feature here and there, but not on fundamentally new stuff. And I'm running out of little time here, but there's this thing known as ROI, return on investment, and big companies have spreadsheets and doing incredible analysis of if you spend X dollars on this project here, we get Y dollars in sales and C dollars in margin, and that's why it's a good investment. Well, in a startup, you don't have to worry about this because you're really betting on one thing that is going to work, hopefully. But this is what you're competing with, right? People doing this sort of large-scale analysis, and they tend to miss things that are perhaps not as obvious, and maybe they're smaller, or maybe it's a market niche, but it doesn't fit this big picture. But clearly, without innovation, you don't drive new revenue, and you don't drive new things. And there is this thing known as the horizon effect. Do you know what the horizon effect is? This is a concept that started in artificial intelligence 30 years ago, where if you play search on the computer and the computer can only look ahead 5 moves or whatever, you don't see the 6th move that actually would be the winning combination, and you make the wrong move. Well, the same is true for people. When we don't see how to get beyond the horizon, we don't start, because what's the point, right? So be very cautious of this sort of horizon effect, which is the way I would describe the world before Christopher Columbus, which is, again, if you don't believe there's land on the other side of the ocean, you will never start the voyage. And the way to get beyond this horizon effect is just to stay focused on your goals and believe that the innovation you're going to deliver has merit and value to get there. Now let's talk about why do some of these great new ideas actually fail? And that is surprisingly simple to analyze. Basically, there's 5 failure modes. You can be too early. That's obvious, the market isn't ready. You can be too late. That's sort of the opposite. The product can be just too difficult or too expensive, or it's just not relevant. But that's why new ideas and startups fail. Very, very basic reasons. On the reverse, if you have good timing, the product is relevant, has value to customers, it's actually predictably successful, right? So just be cautious of the failure modes. And of course, what's the alternative is not to start a company, not to develop the product, so we're not even going to discuss that. So bottom line innovation is at the heart of startup companies, and this is what drives you, to do better things.